Hello and welcome back to the Qreative Life podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Qureshi, but you can call me Q. This episode is a wild ride. In it, I interview my longtime friend and fellow Gen X curmudgeon, Tom Myer. He and I discuss his creative history, his recent reclamation of painting as a medium, and the definition and purpose of art. We recorded this podcast on a Friday evening, so prepare yourself for a slightly unhinged, swear word-filled conversation between two self-proclaimed artistic assholes. Welcome to my podcast, Tom Myer. How's it going, friend?
I'm good, man. Like, it's going to be like minus 15 in Colorado this weekend. Like,
Yeah.
I know you guys are in a deep freeze for Texas, but we're going to be we're getting like warnings like, hey, stay indoors, don't go out, you'll get frostbite.
Yeah.
It's hilariously cold.
Yeah. Well, hey, here's the thing, Myer, is you used to live in Texas. That's how I
Yeah.
know you. And you moved away because you hate the cold, or you hate the heat, I'm sorry. And now you're in a place where it's fucking cold. And I have a really hard time having any empathy for you.
Well, so I grew up in the tropics, and then I spent
Yeah.
30 years of my adult life in Texas. And I will say this very clearly and emphatically. I love so many of the Texans that we met.
Mm.
Pat Ramsey, who's now in Houston, he's a compadre. My buddy Jeff Twining, who's the pilot and a mountain climber, love him, love you. It's so many folks. Chris Larson,
Yeah.
Chris Anderson. And for those of you who are like, let's listen to the Gen Xers talk about the old days. Like we're talking about all the comadres and compadres that we had, like when we were doing this bash.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
At first, it was called Bath. So the
Lonnie's
big,
thing.
the big, yeah, the
Yeah.
Lonnie's thing, the big ass Twitter happy hour, and then it
Hmm.
became the big ass social happy hour. And like, I love all these folks, but I did not enjoy living in Texas,
Yeah.
and part of it was the heat, but also ultimately we left for Colorado because my wife, my long suffering spouse Hope, and anyone who's known as will be cracking up right now because I'm just a in the ass. She had been working in criminal justice reform in Texas for years and in voter registration reform for years in Texas. And in 2018, I think the legislature had passed a bunch of laws and they really started restricting laws. And we were just like, oh, I'm getting the fuck out of here. And we had an opportunity to move for my work, and we did. And we actually moved out of Texas right before the pandemic. We were in Boulder for 87 days or something like that before the pandemic hit,
Ugh.
which was really weird, by the way, being in a new place, no friends, and just
Yeah.
locked in the house. But yeah, and so yes, the heat was one thing, but it was just really the sort of the political climate and just the polarization and just but I do miss a lot of the friends. Like we made some really great friends in Texas. And what's funny to me is I think in terms of this conversation is that, and you and I have had this sort of conversation about in different iterations, which is like you meet folks who, like when you look at your social graph, you're like, oh, these people are reasonable. Like you'd have them over for barbecue and beers and stuff. And nobody seems to be like a complete asinine person, right? But then like you live in a place and everyone has lost their fucking mind when it comes to like abortion rights and like women's,
Yeah.
and you're like, well, where are these people? Like I don't know any of these people who are that crazy. But it happens that way. So anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
I think that speaks to our, like, we just naturally create these bubbles for ourselves. And it's real, like, you have to make, I used to preach this back in the early days of social media. And that was back when bubbles were a thing. Everyone was talking about them. But I actually do think that that's true. You have to go out and specifically look for people who have different points of view. And it's not easy, and it's certainly not always fun, but whatever. Like, I Texas is what Texas is. Like you and I have had this. We were talking before we started recording about how, we're getting to that age where we really just don't give a fuck. And I can see myself. My old man wants to move to another country. Frankly, he's
Mhm,
like, I'm
mhm,
sick
mhm.
of this shit, and he's an immigrant.
And for someone who's for the people who are a part of freedom. And I just did the whole fist up in the air thing. You can't see it. But we believe in freedom and the Constitution and the First Amendment, but you're a Muslim. Whoa.
Yeah,
No, not that kind of freedom.
right.
That's the kind of like the stupidity. I mean, we are in a deeply stupid fucking time in this
Huh. Uh-huh.
and it's just gonna be like 100 years from now, they're gonna be like, you fuckers are dumb.
Well, that is actually a really great jumping off point because it's true. I know you from our tech slash blogging
Yeah.
slash social media community in Austin, and you have a very long, very successful career in technology, which
Mhm.
you're still at. But as long as I've known you, you have been a creative person. You're a Renaissance man. Actually, you and Hope are both this way. Like you guys are both really into all these different things. And so you're both super smart. If I remember correctly, you got your degree in, did you go to get an English? Are you an English major
So
in your
I
undergrad?
got both of my undergraduate degrees in English departments, but
Ah,
I was the that was the so this is going to shock you. You need to sit down
I'm
and
sitting.
for both of those degree programs, I was a huge fucking pain in the ass.
What? I can't imagine.
What? And so like really what I was, so my MA is literally an English MA, English
Ah,
literature MA, but really what it was a cultural anthropology degree in like medieval studies for
oh,
whatever reason, right? And like I was learning like lost language, like dead language, like old Icelandic and all this other shit, like, and I was like looking at archaeological digs of Viking settlements in North America and like all this stuff. And then the English department was like, what, huh? Yeah.
this is for Jane Austen people.
Yeah, and it's just they were like, "What the fuck are you writing?" So my master's thesis was on like I took Arthurian, so I took Chrétien de Troyes, who wrote all these chansons de geste. That was my French accent, and he wrote all these stories. And then I dissected all of those, and I compared and contrasted them to the American Western. And
Oh,
especially
wow.
I was really focused on horse culture and Indo-European, like the Indo-European horse culture and all this stuff, and like how they shows up with the knights and the cowboys and the Indians and all this stuff. And like what is this depiction? What I really focused on was the fact there's a word, and I'm gonna butcher it, simulacrum. So basically what the word entails is that this is a picture of something that does not exist. So if we look at the Arthurian legends,
Mm.
Chrétien de Troyes, the Troyes, and like all these guys, and like all these German Minnesangas and the troubadours, which basically were like Delta blues guys walking around with a guitar from town to town, a lyre, whatever the hell they had, whatever. And they were just singing these songs, right? And they were singing for their supper, literally. And they were telling these stories about these knights errant doing these, or these crazy things, slaying dragons and rescuing princesses and looking for the Holy Grail and all that stuff. They were talking about shit that didn't exist. But then what happened is that this model of courtly splendor, like we think about like the it's chivalry, right?
Yeah.
Like and all this stuff. And so the same thing was happening in Hollywood about the cowboys and the West, how the West was won, and I'm putting giant air quotes, right? And and I'm reading all these books now about how like Indians in Hollywood and how they were depicted and stuff. It's all bullshit. But we see it through, like we see the West, the 19th century, through that lens of this
Yes.
thing that never existed, like kind of like how the medieval imagination viewed the past as
Yeah.
through these stories, right? And like, and of course, I was 20 fucking 1 years old when I wrote this, and I didn't know shit about shit. What the fuck does a 21-year-old know? But like, I think about that writing a lot, and I would like, how would the 53-year-old Tom rewrite that thesis? And it'd be like a lot more nuance to it. But basically, I think my read on it was that it was all horse shit, literally, because I was writing
Yeah.
about horse culture. And so, like, the English department was like, "Thanks."
No,
He's
that's
writing
really
about,
interesting
yeah.
because, and I'll tell you why, we can actually, I want to circle back to that actually at some point because I'm really interested in how, I think a lot of people think that culture creates art. but I'm also really interested in how art creates culture and what happens when people hear these kinds of things or these, have these legends or whatever, and they become so embedded in your self identity is that your identity is then rooted in something that doesn't even exist. And you see that in, my God, everything, like in
Everything.
religious culture, in all these things where people are taking these bits and pieces and, at some point, somebody has come along and constructed a narrative using them, and it becomes reality for people, right? And how, I think that's fascinating, but also then how do we get to the truth through that? Because then when you start asking people questions or you start doing research, I mean, even if you go into just good old academia, people start to freak out. Like I've had friends that teach religious studies, and they'll get these wide-eyed kids that come in there as freshmen, and they start talking to them in academic terms about their religion
Mhm.
and their holy books, and then people freak the fuck out because they're like, like, are you saying that it's not actually literally the truth?
Right.
That all of the so and that I mean that happens not just in religion, but like I'm saying in all these different areas, and I think that's really interesting. I wonder if I mean, do you think that it's a give and take, or do you think that we're all pretty much just living bullshit that's been fed to us because we really don't, like, most of us don't have the ability to actually go back and verify shit. Like a perfect example is the legend of America, right? Like
Yeah,
how
yeah, yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah. Yep.
founded and all of this stuff, and like
Yep.
it's so internalized because you hear it from I mean, I was drawing, freaking pilgrims and Indians in kindergarten, right?
Yep.
Like this is
Yep.
just so much part of who we are. But at what point are we actually authoring our own reality, right? I don't
Hmm.
want to like believe things that aren't true, but it's not possible for me to go through and like interrogate every aspect of my life and society and my beliefs and whatever. So like at what point and
Hmm.
how do we
Hmm.
step back from it and say like, hey, I don't really believe that. I don't know what I believe, but I have this kind of squishy middle ground and I need to figure out how to proceed. And it's really hard to proceed without a narrative, without an idea of where you're coming from or where you've been.
So
Does this make sense?
no, it totally does. I mean, I think Yuval Noah Harari wrote this really incredible book called *Sapiens:
Mm.
Brief History of Humankind*. I love that book so much. When I picked up he actually they published a graphic, I think a 2 or 3 part graphic novel series based on the book. And one of the things that he talks about Homo sapiens as opposed to like say Neanderthals or the other like people don't realize that there were like 6 competing sentient humans species at the same time and basically Homo sapiens either killed them all, intermarried and fucked them out, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
or they just independently were like there was I think I forget which group was like on an Indonesian island and they just basically ran out of resources before anyone could contact them and they were like little hobbit guys,
Mm.
little dudes, right? And I forget which ones they are, but so the key the key thing that he talks about is that what made Homo sapiens incredibly competitive is their ability to create fictions.
Oh, wow.
And the common thread is basically like all creatures of a certain level of sophistication can deceive,
Mm.
whether they create camouflage or like, for example, like I love it. Like, so here in Colorado, we have a lot of jays. And so you see like a lot of little birds and stuff like struggling to get like seeds and stuff and grass in the winter. And then you hear a hawk call, a Cooper's hawk,
Mm.
the piercing shriek of that hawk. And all those birds just, and even our chickens in our backyard just go, fuck this, I'm out. And then you're looking around, and immediately you look in the sky and you're trying to find that silhouette, right?
Mm.
And it's not there. It's the fucking jay. And the jay is deceived, right? And it's made a noise just like the hawk.
Oh, no
And
way.
so
That's so interesting.
absolutely. And you see it like, and he talks about in the book how like different monkeys can deceive other monkeys and maybe like get more food and they'll maybe like make noises and such and gestures that the monkeys go somewhere else
Look, the
while
bit
they
you're blue.
hoard. Yeah. Look at the clown. Look at the clown. And they're like hoarding whatever. And so this is not a unique thing for Homo sapiens, but what we do is we create fictions, and the fictions that we create are pervasive. And what I'm talking about is money.
Mm.
We have this fiction called money,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And we got
yeah,
to earn it. We got to
yeah,
save it, and
yeah,
we might not have enough.
right.
That are like if you look at hunter-gatherer societies, if we were to go back in time to the Arapaho or the Cheyenne or tribes in Africa or whatever, like they don't care about fucking money. Like they're like, oh, you don't have a
Yeah,
tent to sleep in tonight? It's -10. Come over here, brother. Like come over, we're not gonna let you be homeless. Uh when we hunted the buffalo or whatever the hell it was, and we brought back, and they're like, there's enough for us and there's enough for you. Like whatever. There wasn't this idea of like tiers and we're better castes. Somehow
yes,
I'm better than you,
yeah,
than
yeah,
whatever. And then we have religion, like we have gods and we have these things and we're trying to explain things in our world, and because things happen like earthquakes and volcanoes and whatever.
yeah,
We have nation like this idea of nation states. I'm English and you are French and you're going to beat your ass, like
yeah,
whatever, or you're German and I'm Irish, or I don't fucking know, whatever.
yeah,
And so we have these ideas, right? And so we maintain this stuff and we're really, really good about it, to the point where if I were to point out to people, hey, I always like that moment where like we've all kind of agreed that money is good, and then we're going to go ahead and go to school and go into debt so that we can get a good job to pay, and then we're going to have a mortgage. We're going to
yeah,
owe this bank thing, this other fiction.
yeah,
Like and then we're living in this constant fiction that we've all agreed to, right? And we're
yes,
inside of it.
yes.
And
Mass delusion,
yeah.
totally.
And we've all agreed to it, right? We've all
Yes,
agreed that GDP is somehow a thing that we need to track, and then inflation is something. And so that's what we're good at. And it has liberated us in many senses. And we can turn this back towards art, because everyone's like, we're going to talk about art and creativity.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I think, right, but I think it's also created the cages that we're in. And I think Ursula K. Le Guin, who's a science fiction writer, talked about like we cannot imagine right now what it would be like to be free of capitalism, because
hmm,
we are in it
yeah,
any more than the people who were trapped in the like the godly right of kings era,
right, right,
right?
yeah,
Some guy decides I'm king because God said so. And everyone went, oh, okay. Oh, I guess your son gets to be your king too, whatever. And then on and on and on and on until we guillotine him. And then like, I mean, they had no way out of it until they got out of it. And we're in the same, so we can't think of any way out of this box that we're in because we've
yeah,
created the box, right?
yeah.
And so we're really good at that.
Well, I have two responses. One, I don't think we all agreed to it, right? That's part of what is
True.
kind of driving my line of questioning is at some point, somebody agreed to it. People who had more power than me agreed to it.
Yep.
And after a couple of generations of status quo, it just becomes the reality. It's no longer something that was chosen or implemented, and we have no frame of reference for anything other than that, right? And so it is we've inherited it. How do we then start to imagine something different for ourselves? And I think, no, I don't think, I know that that's the purpose of art. I mean, that is the purpose of art. It's why totalitarian regimes hate art, if it's not specifically propaganda that helps reinforce their version of reality. But like artists themselves are rebels, right? They're there to provide points of view that sort of shake us out of this sort of mass delusion and say, wait, what are our real priorities and what really is important and what would really be best for me and for the people around us? And when you talk about art, there are people, and I think there are people at all levels of society who are really passionate about showing something different. And I wonder if I'm not even good. I don't want to even put this into your mouth. So I want to ask you, what is it about creativity?
Mm.
Because yes, you are a writer. You've been a writer. You've written books. I remember you played guitar. You started that ages ago. I don't know if you're still doing it.
Yep.
And now you've started visual art.
Mhm.
You started doing. I don't know how long you've been doing that, but I've
Restarted is actually
okay,
the,
okay,
yeah.
yeah.
I
I've
mean,
only
so
noticed recently.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so I think one thing that, like, if I were to tell people to pause and rewind
Hmm.
and during this podcast episode, I really believe that there's like three non-consensual things that happen in your life. I want to go back to what you said about agree. Like, not everybody agrees. And I
Hmm.
think this is the kind of agree where, like, she didn't say no. So, like, like she was knocked out, like, at the party, like the
Yeah, yeah,
fucking bag,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's like, so there's like three non-consensual things that happen in your life. One is you're born. No one's ever asked to be born, right? The second thing is your death.
Yes.
No one, I mean, unless you're gonna off yourself, like, nobody knows when or how or whatever, right? It's just gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
And then I think the third thing is sort of like what you land in when you were born and where you live. Nobody's asked me, did I want to fucking be born at the end of the 20th century
Hmm.
in a Christian culture? Why not Hindu in the 14th century? Why not American Indian in why not Mayan in the 8th century or so? I don't
Yeah.
fucking know. So there are things taken away from you, the variables or like those things are like, if you think of your life as a Dungeons and Dragons game where, like, all
Hmm.
these variables, like, these are the things that you have no control over. Everything else is up to you, given the constraints of where you're at. Obviously, if you're under severe poverty, you can't expect them to, like, become the owner of, to become Elon Musk. Not that anyone, I think, would ever want to become Elon Musk.
God forbid.
God forbid, whatever. You know what I'm talking about? Like a billionaire, like
Yeah.
Sylvie. So, okay. So here's a controversial statement, and let's kick this around.
Okay. Hit me.
I think every one of us is an artist.
I completely agree. I don't think
Okay,
that's
well, you're
controversial at
supposed
all.
to be a pain. Q, you're
Oh,
supposed to be a pain
sorry.
in the
Sorry.
ass. You're
You're
supposed to fight
wrong.
me on
Fuck
this.
you. You're wrong.
Oh, fuck you. Fuck you. We're gonna make fetch happen right now.
No, no. No. I actually think it's an inherent. Like, I think it is inherent to our species. I think it has to do with the
Every
way our
single one
brains
of
have
us,
developed.
every
Yes.
single one of us,
Yes.
whether that is we wake up and so I think like 99.9999999% of the art that we have, 100 billion people have 100 billion Homo sapiens have lived and died on this earth since the beginning of, whatever it is that, the dawn of time.
Yeah.
And I think 99.999% of that has been like you wake up and you step outside of your little lodge and you see the sun hitting a dandelion or something, and then there's a dew on it, and you think maybe a couple of, like, really nice lines of
Hmm.
something, or maybe later on you go into your cave and I don't know, you think about, and maybe it inspires something, but it's not recorded. It sinks into a bog or something. It's a fleeting thought. It's never recorded on video or paper, and we go through life, right? And we do that 150,000 times a day, right? We have these little artistic moments. In fact, I think, like, if you look at a bunch of kids, I think art is play, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And you look at all
Yes.
these kids, they're doodling and they have no fear, and they're just like scooting paint around or whatever, or playing with Play-Doh, whatever it is. Maybe they give them an iPad and they're, farting around with that,
Hmm.
and they're creating and they're energized and they're, like, thinking about stuff, and they're, doing whatever, right? Or maybe that art is a performance. They dance. They're just dancing around. Maybe they have this. You ever seen a kid do that where they've got this music in their head and they just like,
Yeah.
they're
For
just
sure.
playing around. That's that's art, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
I I, ha I half jokingly told somebody, I said, if I go outside and it's minus 10 degrees and I pee in the snow and I make a little, whatever, that's art. I think that's art,
Yes.
right?
So what? Let's break this down because I want to know what you're exactly saying. The the definition we're using for art here is to take in stimuli and have it evoke something in us that requires an action. And that action has to be outside of ourselves, right? So whether it's drawing, painting, whatever, on the side of the cave,
Writing
whether it's,
haiku,
yeah, whatever it
whatever, right?
is,
Yeah.
you're moved to do something by your experience in the world. And whatever the outcome of that is, I think we can safely call art. But I would also add that I actually feel like art is that process, right?
Hmm.
Art is actually the noticing things because I think artists are noticers. I think they're people who, like you said, like how many fucking people, like I totally relate to stepping outside and seeing a dewdrop on a, on a daisy or whatever. But how many people, not to be cliche, stop and smell the roses, right?
Hmm.
But when they do, it it's almost natural. You don't even have to try. You become you're moved to do something. And a lot of people feel uncomfortable with that because it's we're not raised in a society or in a world that prizes that process, I don't think. Or if it does, it doesn't prioritize it. And so people push it down or ignore it or do whatever. But I think that that's innate to all human beings, right? And maybe even some non-humans. And so, what would you add to that definition as far as how we're going to talk about art then?
So I think so that's the foundational layer. I think so
Yeah,
like play like creativity requires play, requires freedom, requires
time.
stepping like just time and just and like whatever. If we start putting layers on this cheesecake of art, like
I
do
like
cheesecakes
cheesecake.
do cheesecakes have layers or is this more like I'm not sure what the I'm not sure where we're going with this, but like I think what happens is um, and I talk to artists all the time, and some of them are like they're really super good about like they pick up on a theme for their work right away.
Hmm.
I really envy them because they for the path that I've taken is technical approach. And so when you look at the work that I'm doing on my website and my Instagram account, can I plug?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's Meyerman.art, Meyerman.art, and then I'm Meyerman underscore art on dot art. Anyway, on Instagram. So I had a back injury this time last year, and I was down and out. I was on all these drugs, and some of them were fantastic, and some of them were not so
Excellent.
much. Yeah, just to try to deal. So what ended up happening is in April of last year, they took a bone shard out of my spine that had
Oh,
gone from my vertebrae into my spinal column. It was really bad.
damn.
And so like the drugs weren't enough and I needed something and I didn't have the attention span to write anymore. So I was like, I want to start painting again. So when I was a kid, I was painting a lot and I was drawing stuff. Unfortunately for me, I was drawing and painting a lot of stuff that was Dungeons and Dragons related and like hard rock and metal and like devil shit. And my parents had recently converted to Christianity and they were like, fuck this, like you are going to hell. And I was just like, yeah, I know that, but whatever. Um, So they put the kibosh on that shit right away, right? And so like, so I didn't do anything. I mean, I turned to photography for a long time. I was taking pictures and stuff, and I was like, I'm gonna start painting again. And so I started doing pencil sketches, and then moved to charcoal, and I was like, oh shit, I remember charcoal. And I started painting with oil painting. I was like, and then I was doing acrylics, and so what I was about was I remembered I was like, this has got to be play. Just push paint around. And I started doing a lot of abstracts, and then I remembered what I taught my students when I was teaching writing, and I remembered what happened when I was learning guitar. And what it was constraints. So I would notice with my freshmen when I was teaching this class at college level was like if you walk into a room of freshmen and go write me something, they're just gonna look at you like you fucking just pushed them off a cliff, like Hans Gruber coming off the tower, like whoa, like you know, like that stare, like whatever. But if you go to them and start adding, like I guarantee you get up to three constraints, maybe four, you end up with a winner. This is what I
Yeah,
mean. So instead of
yeah.
just writing me anything, I need a 500-word story. That's first constraint about a dog. That's the second
Hmm.
constraint. And it needs to be set in 19th century England. Bam! Anyone listening to this podcast could probably write a 500-word story about a dog in 19th century England just because I just gave you those constraints, right?
Yes, right.
The same thing happens with guitar. Like if you look at a guitar, there's millions of combinations, any musical instruments, millions of combinations. But if I tell you we're going to play a slow blues, that's tempo, first constraint, in the key of A, second constraint, and we're going to use the minor pentatonic. And oh, let me give you a fourth constraint. I would like you to maybe do it in the style of Robert Johnson.
Mm.
Bam. And the Devil in My Kitchen Blues comes up, or Jumbo Shrimp Blues, or something, any of those things. And so the painting was what I started out with was I just was like reveling in just all the things, right? All the tools, all the paint colors, all the canvases. And then I realized that I loved certain textures and I loved certain color palettes and I loved different subjects. And so then I started to focus on those. And then I was able to actually make something that actually didn't look like I was just pushing paint around.
Mm.
But to get there, I had to accept the fact that I had no idea what I was doing and I was just going to push paint around for a while.
Yes, yes, yes.
Right? It's
Mm-hmm.
this idea that if you wait until you're good at something before you start, you're
Yeah,
never going to start,
yeah,
right? And that's what
yeah,
blocks everybody up.
yeah.
They
That's
don't,
that's such a good point. I am writing a novel. I started writing a novel last year for the first time. And I went through this hellish period of just being like, what the fuck am I doing? And it was so uncomfortable for me. Because when you get to our age, you know what you're good at, and you tend to just kind of stick with what you're good at. And so you have like to learn something new, or if you want to try something new, you have to put yourself in an uncomfortable position and immerse yourself in it and let yourself suck. And that is a
Mhm.
terrible feeling. It's a
is
terrible,
a
terrible feeling.
is a terrible feeling. It is the
Yeah,
worst feeling, especially if you get to your 50s or 40s or whatever, and you've had competence in something other. I mean, hopefully at that point in your
exactly.
life, you're good at something, parenting, your
Right.
job, and then you're like picking up something completely new. Like, I mean, I can't tell you. So I've been playing guitar for 12 years. I actually have stopped for the last year because I was really concentrating on painting. But the first 3 or 4 years were amazing because it was like all about play. And then I had a 2 or 3 year period after that first 2 or 3 years where I couldn't get to the point where I could change chords
Mm.
to play a song. Like if you were to tell me like, hey, play the Police or the Eagles or whatever, or, whatever song, whatever, I couldn't change from C to G to D, whatever. I couldn't do it. And it just sounded like crap. I could do those individual chords and I knew what was going on. And I almost quit. And then at some point, something happened and it just happened that I could change chords. And I was like, oh shit, I can play songs. Like I can, I'm not fucking Stradivarius or anything, or Eddie Van Halen or anything, but I can do the cowboy chords and the campfire shit.
But is
And
that
like
was that a mental thing, or was it an actual just like skill thing?
it just I mean, I think what I was just like, the claw, just like locked in, and I was just like, and I had to like learn, dude, like fucking relax. Like
Mm.
this is not an 8-year-old kid who needs a heart transplant. You're just
Yeah.
fuck's sake, you're just playing an Eagles song or something.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And just like I mean, you're just making a chord change from C to G, or G to
Yeah.
D or whatever. And like it's just cowboy chords and just relax, and I think we have this whole thing where that's the other thing too, I think, is like we have this, and uh, I'm not sure how much it affected Gen X, but I think the kids that are coming after us are definitely part of this whole thing where like they live in a world where they enter school. Like I'm hearing about parents where they're like getting their kids into like Montessori at like
Oh yeah.
age 2, and like they got to be in chess club by age 4, and they got to be like learning Russian at age 5, and you're like, holy shit, like let the kid be a kid.
Yeah.
And I mean, everyone's oversubscribed, and and everyone's
Yeah.
just like really like trying to hit it on all levels all the time. That whole thing where you just said, where it's like it's okay to suck. Like, in fact, you're going to learn more from sucking than you are from winning at
Yeah.
something new.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, if you just give yourself a little bit of grace, and I will tell you something, I suck at grace for myself, right? I'm terrible at it,
Yeah. Yeah.
terrible at it.
Yeah.
I want to be good at everything
Of course.
right
Yeah.
away.
Yeah. Especially if it's something that you're doing voluntarily, it becomes really hard to not step away and be like, well, that's just not for me. If like it's not like you have to do it, it's that you want to do it, but if it doesn't just naturally come to you, the temptation is just to be like, well, I'm just not, that's just not for me. It's just not something I was meant to be able to do. And that's BS. I think anyone can do some level of whatever. Like you were saying, like you've been playing, you play the guitar. Maybe you're not Van Halen, but that's okay. You can still play the guitar and you get enjoyment from that. It gives you a creative outlet, and that's how it should be. And you can see yourself progressing, right? You're getting better and better. By the time you're 80, maybe you will be Van Halen.
I mean, my goal is that when I retire,
Yeah,
which hopefully be soonish. I'm not sure when, but like when I retire and I'm sitting on my front porch, and I mean, I don't think retirement is going to mean for us what people think about. Like,
right.
we're not going to be out fishing every day. We're going to be volunteering and doing stuff, and doing whatever and staying active. But I want to be on my front porch and playing my guitar, and or having wonderful books to read, and being part of an active mental life, right?
Hmm.
And painting, and doing stuff, and just having interesting conversation with interesting people, and about things like art and culture and books and stuff and movies, and it doesn't need to be super deep, but just but I feel like the thing that I encounter with a lot of my younger colleagues that I work with, or folks that I meet on the street who are in their younger years, one of the topics that I keep coming against, they have come up in an ultra competitive, ultra fragmented world. There is no equivalent, and I think I'm older than you
Oh yeah, I'm
by
about to
about
turn 50. Yeah,
Oh, okay. So I'm not that much older than you, but
right.
like when I was coming up, I forget the number, but it was like everyone at school when I was coming up saw the two-part MASH finale.
Uh-huh.
We all saw
Yeah.
whatever that episode of Magnum PI, or
Mm,
where we knew, like in the 80s, we all owned the same records, and we'd all seen ET. All of us, right? I
right.
mean, like as soon as the damn thing came out, even though we were too young to see it, we were sneaking in, we were watching it, and or Back to the Future or whatever. We all had this shared thing, right? And
Right.
that's just not possible right now. Like there's like 150,000 channels of shit going on all the
Yeah.
time, and music and God knows what else, and they don't have a shared vocabulary at all.
Yeah.
And they've come up with this whole thing where like their parents have oversubscribed them to everything, and I really think like I went out to a work trip. This is before my current employer, but I went out to the West Coast, and I was having after dinner. Like we did all this stuff, and then we went out for drinks and dinner. And it was a bunch of folks who were software engineers. And I came through software engineering in an era where all of us were just strays. Like we
Yeah.
came in, like I had medieval studies, background. We were just like strays, and we were like, "Hey, let's fucking build some shit." Oh, no, 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 no.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I literally my thinking was, I learned Old Icelandic and all these old dead languages. I can learn Perl and Python and whatever. It's not a big deal. Just another language, whatever.
Yeah.
But these guys are all like master's degree in like computer science and whatever. And so like you go to dinner with these guys, and all they want to talk about is like database sharding. And I'm like, can we fucking talk about like what movies you like and
Yeah.
what's a great book you've read? They
Yeah.
couldn't do it. They hadn't
Yeah.
read a book in a long time, and they hadn't like gone out and like enjoyed stuff or looked at art or whatever. And I was just like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
I think this is a really good point that ties into what you said before. It is about having constraints. You would think with all the access people have and all these different channels and all this different shit that's going out there, kids would
right.
just be like exploding with creativity. And yet they're overwhelmed and there's no constraint there, so it doesn't seem like they even know where to start. Like
They
it's just
can't. They're just being bludgeoned, right?
yes, yeah, and it's just you see a lot of copycatting and a lot of uh like the whole world feels like it's just obsessed with trends at this point. It has and if you're a person that is not into that, then you definitely you feel left out. You're like, well, I just don't get it, right? Our generation doesn't get much respect. But I think the one thing we have to offer is the concept of fucking around and finding out.
Oh,
And
and
we
that
we
violence is sometimes the answer.
the thing is, and we didn't necessarily have a choice in that either. Like our parents were just like, fuck you, go fuck around and find out. But through that process, we had, so what I was saying, we had a limited amount of whatever we were taking in. We had three channels on the TV. We all had the same whatever.
Cartoons
So
were only on Saturday
yeah,
mornings,
yeah. So we had those
period.
those creative
Yeah.
constraints, but then on top of that, we also had a whole lot of time when there was just nothing to do, and we had to figure out what to do with that time. And it's when you have that freedom that you can start listening to that call, that little voice, when you start getting those long moments, when you notice the fucking dewdrop on the daisy. But if you don't have that, if you are scheduled to the nth, your poor little prefrontal cortex is just being
Jammed
slammed
full. Yep.
24/7. Yeah. And there's no frame of reference to anything. It's just all out there, just floating around. Like, how are you gonna create? And anyone who has tried to learn something properly, and I agree that art is something we all do, but art is also at a certain point it becomes a discipline, right? It becomes
Yes.
something that you have to pursue, and there are rules. And even if you want to break those rules, you have to learn them first to know how to
Right.
break them, right?
That's the next level, I think. So we talked about art as play, and then we talked about constraints,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And
yeah.
then I think the third one is there, and there are millions of things that you can infinitely combine,
Yes.
that you can pick. So, for example, you may decide that for the next year, and I actually encourage, and actually I got this advice from another artist. And so you'll see in my paintings lately that I've been turning more. So I've always loved mountains and water and moons and all kinds of things. I've also been painting animals and all this other. Okay, so I've been focusing on digital painting. What can I do on an iPad, right? I love moonscapes, like nightscapes, I like
Uh-huh.
the dramatic effect of that light, right? And so, like for yourself as an artist, you may decide I want to do watercolors and I want to do flowers,
Yeah.
and I want to have a color palette that's around the color red, reds and
Hmm.
oranges. I want to get really freaking good at that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm so sorry, I said freaking, really fucking good at that. But yeah, yeah, or like if you're a writer, like you want to write Shakespearean sonnets or something, I don't know, or murder mysteries or something, whatever. You're going to pick something and you're going to get really, really good at it because I think that's the next level where you just sort of persist. And so you may abandon that. And that's the thing is that I don't think art is a thing where you have to like it's not like a brand where you're like always forever and ever the moon guy, whatever. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
you can think back and you're like, this is my Picasso blue period, like
I was just gonna say that. Exactly.
whatever, right.
Yeah.
And then you move on to another thing. Like maybe you get really fascinated with trees or I don't know, whatever. And so, or maybe there's a different style, like or a different, like I've been really fascinated on the iPad, with Procreate, the different brushes that you can use to create. So I started off doing nothing but abstracts, and I've moved into landscapes and critters. What I've started to figure out is that the landscapes that really speak to me, the ones that say Tom Myer, are the ones that are created with abstract brushes. And so you'll see like my moonscapes and stuff are done, they're not realistic at all. They're done with these abstract, these crazy pattern brushes. You can tell it's a moonscape with a mountain. Well, I hope so. I mean, if
Yeah,
I've done
yeah.
that, I've probably failed. But like that's where I'm going, right? And if you look at any artist who is successful, who has created some sort of name, what happens is what people talk about in the art world is they developed a language. And so it's hard to pin that down. But if you go, like if you study art enough, you're like, oh, that's a Rothko, or that's a Monet, that's
Yeah.
a Van Gogh. And so like you see like the paint swirls and the language that they developed. And eventually you see artists do this. They come back to their subject matter and whatever. And I think that is where that is the launching point to what you said at the very beginning of this, which is you were talking about truth,
Mm. Yeah, right.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And once you get to where you're a Van Gogh or a Monet, doing his lily pads and stuff, and you see we went to the Monet, so there was a traveling exhibition of Monet right before the pandemic started here in Denver Museum, and we went, and there was like, I don't know, like 89 fucking paintings of lily
Nice.
pads. And here's this guy. So Monet was painting these in the 1930s, and actually, as the Germans were like invading France, like, I mean, it was bad, like in the 1940s. And so he's just painting and painting. He had these Japanese lily pond things in his garden, and he
Yep.
was just painting and painting and painting. He painted like, I mean, whatever. And if you look at Van Gogh at the end of his life, people don't realize he died of a gunshot wound when he was like in his 30s. He sold one painting in his life. He created 2,100 oil paintings in like 2.5 or 3 years.
Amazing. Amazing.
So, like, you break that down 50 weeks a year, 52 weeks a year. It's something, I worked this out. It's something like 10 paintings a week,
Wow.
right? 15,
Yeah,
20 paintings a week at some point.
yeah,
Man was insane. And
yeah.
so, like, to give you some context, between March 12th and December 12th, which is 275 days, I had created over 500 paintings.
Wow.
None of them were anywhere close to Van Gogh. Let's just be really clear.
Sure, sure.
Uh, but on some days I was painting 3 or 4 paintings a day. That's what the intensity of the pain I was feeling. And so I know I think about that number a lot. I think about like how many he was like just cranking out because he was on a mission. He was trying to figure out like what the hell was inside of him. Because he was
Yes.
like running around, he was running around like doing like art gallery stuff and selling paintings and stuff for an art gallery. And he lived in poverty, like abject poverty. He like, I mean, his brother would send him money and like his friends would send him money. And everyone in the village thought he was a mad bastard because he was a mad bastard, probably from all the oil paints that I don't know if you've ever played with paints, but like I played with oil paints for a while.
Yeah,
If you do not have like a like exhausted room,
yeah,
like you are going to be affected by this stuff.
yeah,
But yeah, but he was looking, so like that's what we're talking about. Like when I look at his like his sunflower paintings and stuff, I'm like, this is a mad bastard. And he's figured out something,
yeah, yeah.
right?
And
He's
it's uniquely his. It's like voice, right? Like it's
yes.
very uniquely his, but you can't get there
Mm-mm.
without peeling
You're
back
not going to
those
get out the
layers.
gate like that.
Yeah, and you
I
have to
mean,
start somewhere,
maybe one guy, maybe one gal in a generation will come out and they're like a Hemingway or a Dorothy Parker or something.
right?
And like the first thing they write, you're like, oh, that's.
Yeah. But even
But
those people, like I
mm,
interviewed somebody a couple of episodes ago, and she had left academia, wrote this series of 4 books. They're true crime novels set in like the third century, and they're all very nice. But she was talking about how the first book, she wrote them over 5, 6 years. The first book, when she went back to read it, she was like, "Oh, that's just not, really up to snuff." And a friend of hers, who's also, I think, a writer, said,
you're insane. These are great.
he said, "Your first book is your Love Me Do, and your last book that you've just read is your Hey Jude, and both are
Yep.
okay. They're both good, right? It's just that
Mhm.
we have it in our heads that if we're just not like we have to be brilliant all of a sudden. I guess what it is we don't want to publicly show ourselves growing. Maybe it's because it feels humiliating or it's definitely a vulnerable feeling, but nobody can avoid that. You're not going to write the same way when you start that you do 10, 20 years down the line, or paint or anything else, right? That doesn't mean that what you're doing now isn't valid or good. It just means that that's also part of the process.
So I'm going to put you on the spot. How
Hit
many
me.
works of art did Picasso make in his 78-year career?
Oh, Jesus. I mean, including the napkins. Like he
How
probably,
many? There's
probably,
actually a count. There's actually a count.
okay. I'll just take a wild guess. 2,300.
147,800.
That's crazy.
How many of those are considered to be timeless, earth-shattering pieces of work that will stand the test of time until the galaxies collide into each other and somebody would point to it and say, this is what Homo sapiens can fucking do. It's
Yeah.
less than 300,
Yeah.
but he created so much. Not to say that so that is a way of being, right? Of
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
cranking, 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 cranking. There are other artists who create one or two or three things in their life, and they're all fucking brilliant, right? And that's
Yeah.
another way of being. But like Picasso created hundreds, 100,000 plus, not all of his, it's like when I look at, so I had about 500 physical paintings in the first 9 months and about another three or 400 digital paintings. And like when I looked at so I took a moment over the Christmas break. I took a 2 week off period because I needed to refresh
Yeah.
and it's to think about things. And I looked back and I was like, of these, 700, 800 pieces that I did, sketches and paintings and God knows what else. There's about 20 or 30 that I'm like, damn, this is good. Like this is actually like, wow, I'm doing something here. Like this is something, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I was able to like and go back and like build on that. I was like, I figured out like, hey, you keep painting mountains and you keep painting moons and you keep painting, whatever. Maybe there's something here, like let's keep going, right? And so I was completely open about like putting all that stuff on Instagram. And because I wanted to build community. I had one jackass who came through. He went through in one evening and he went through about 70 of my paintings and he just basically rode them all into the ground. I was like, cool. I mean, I
What the
know most of these
fuck?
are crap.
Who is that guy?
I blocked him. He's just an asshole. But
You need
like,
to tell me so I could go harass him. That's
the
bullshit.
world,
That's
the
fucking
world is
bullshit.
the world is full of people like that. Like I
Oh,
can tell you right now, like whenever you post a piece of art, you're gonna get like feedback that is so hilarious. Like you use too many colors, you don't use enough colors. Your perspective is too far away. Your perspective is too close. Blah, 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 blah. It's the kind of thing you get with people who like want to criticize writing. So I have there's a whole other conversation we can have about like and what's true of the world of writing and is true of the world of art and the world of music, frankly.
yep.
They're the people who create. And then what I think of is and I'm going to get a whole bunch of shit for this, but there's a whole bunch of people, obviously, who enjoy it and love it and want to be participating in that. But there's a whole bunch of people who live like parasites off of that initial creation.
Uh-huh.
And I'm gonna get a whole bunch of shit about this because I think that like not art critics, people or even their official like New York Times art critic or like this asshole I met on Instagram.
Yeah.
There are people just rando fuckers that just want
Yeah.
to take a shit on a piece of art because they're like whatever or writing or a piece of music because they just don't like it. It's like okay, you don't like it, great, good for
Even
you.
journalism. I was thinking this like every time you turn around, there's some kind of bullshit controversy about Taylor Swift. And it
Right, right,
has
right, right,
really
right, right.
nothing to do with her. It's the fact that she's
Exactly.
achieved this certain level, and everyone's like, well, if you mention her, you're going to get traffic to your site. So let's just invent some controversy around it. Like, it's
Right,
just shit. It's just bullshit.
right. What's interesting, like thank you for bringing up Taylor Swift. So honestly, I wouldn't know Taylor Swift song if she took a shit on my head. Not my thing. I don't care. I love the fact that it's triggering all these guys. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Love
yeah.
it. Like, oh, there's a successful woman who's creating art on her own terms and like doing all this stuff and making shitloads of money, and you fucking hate it. That's fucking great. I love that shit. Like, as Gen X, like we were constantly rode down for like, oh, you're listening to that devil music and
Yeah,
hair metal and bullshit and this and that and MTV and all this other stuff. And they just made a big stand. Like if the internet was alive back then, it would just been all about like, I don't know, Peter Gabriel's, sledgehammer video or something, whatever controversy was ginned up at the time, which when you look back, you're like, Jesus fucking Christ, like what the fuck are you people like so excited about? And so, like I said, like we're good at making up things, these fictions, and that goes for the criticism too,
yeah, yeah.
because you have these people who are out there making things, right? And then you have a whole bunch of people who kind of ride along and need that first person to make a thing. And the problem is that we have such a toxic relationship right now with this stuff where it can be pretty like, well, right now, what I think what happens now, like, so within, so I, so I, so I have this present, so I'm in the security world and I made this presentation because I created this art channel and Instagram And I think within like 2 minutes of me posting my first piece of art,
Yeah.
this guy started commenting on my art. And what he wanted was to buy my art. I was like fucking hype. I was like, damn, someone likes my art. It turned out, long story short, that this was an NFT guy.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah.
It's a, you know, the whole, all that bullshit.
Yeah.
And so I became kind of interested. Like I got so many during, like, not because my art was spectacular or anything, but it's just, it was that period of time, right?
Right. Right.
And NFTs were bubbling and all this other shit. And so I went and took a course with domestika.org on how to create NFTs, and I learned how to do it. And I set up a whole thing, and I did this thing, and I started minting NFTs and all this stuff, and just to see like what was going on. And then I ran into the second tier of scam, which was, oh, you've put your stuff on this particular marketplace. We want you to go to this marketplace. And I was like, okay, a security guy was like, okay, like what are you trying to do here? And I was like, I followed through, and I would record my interaction with these people, and then I created this presentation. And my dear friend Renee, who's also in security field, said that what I should call it is NFTs. Nope, fuck that. So it's on my website, and like all the how the scam works and how what they're trying to get you to do,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever. And it's fascinating. And then so that went away for a while, right? Now probably the last 4 or 5 months I haven't heard a peep, and then a couple of days ago now it's starting up again. The drumbeat of NFT is starting again. I think because of the crypto exchange thing, crypto spot crypto and NFT or ETFs something. But like that, that is the first thing you have to get through, like all the scam artists who want to get your art. But then also too, like if you put yourself out there, like I think the risk is that you're going to encounter a bunch of people who are going to just shit all over you.
Right. Right. And that's probably why kids today really aren't comfortable stepping out and doing anything. They're not fucking around and finding out because the stakes are so high socially. You put something out there, and if it's just not, I mean, people don't even have to have a reason. They'll just come at you. And if you're young and especially insecure, or even if you're old and you're insecure, you're just trying something new, it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there because you're going to get shit for it, right? Let me ask you, like, how do you build that kind of resilience,
Mm,
right? Because it's not possible to be an artist anymore in this day and age without having some callous there against public opinion. And the thing is, real art often challenges public opinion. So you're not
mhm,
going to be able to do it unless you have, I mean, I'm dealing with that right now. Like, how do you make yourself not immune? Because I don't know if you can ever be immune, but build up that courage to be able to be like, I'm going to do something that is unusual, that
mhm,
is uniquely me, right?
mhm,
Which is the goal, right? That we want to be our Monets and Picassos. We want to follow and find our unique lens that we can
mhm,
share with the world. But I know I'm going to get shit for it, and that hurts, and it's painful, and it's terrifying, and you're already feeling vulnerable. Like, did you feel that, or do you like? I know you don't really fucking care anymore about most stuff, but like, but don't you do? I mean, how do you build that up? How do you build those calluses?
You know, Q, I like my coffee like my soul, which is like black and bitter. But with a little bourbon in it, you get my day started.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, so I think about my goals. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
I think we have become over tactical. I love, like all these, like, how to be your the best you.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
mean, yeah, I got an Apple Watch, and I will watch I close my rings every day, whatever. I know that this is like consistency, but but I think we've become really tactical in our lives and all this stuff. And I think about my goals. And so my goal is, so like, in 100 years, I'm fucking dead.
yeah,
Well before then, like whatever.
yeah,
And so I want to create something beautiful. Like I've decided that in the last few months, like I want to create landscapes that are me, right? But that are a picture, like I think about like a little picture view, like a little box, and I'm looking in and I see a meadow. I discovered this on these hikes when we go up in Colorado. Go up, it's a really hot day down here in the summer, and we go, gain 5,000 feet and we drop 20 degrees. But you take these, hours long hikes and you're in a meadow with trees and you hear the birds and stuff, and there's mountains in the background and you can see the storm coming in. So you got to turn around pretty soon because you're gonna get hail pretty soon. And even though it's July, you're 10,000 feet, but there's truth in that meadow,
Yeah.
right? You're
Hmm.
sitting there and you're taking a little break and you're having your little jerky and a little water, and you put your fat ass on, on the rock, and you're sitting there and you're looking at these columbines and stuff and whatever, and you see little mushrooms. And maybe if you're paying attention, you see the little rock squirrels running around and stuff, and you're like, oh man, this is great. And I don't think about work, and I don't think
Hmm.
about anything, none of my problems, until I get back in the car and I'm driving back down the mountain. And so I think about that. I think of that when I'm painting. So the last couple of paintings I've been painting, I've been doing a lot of meadows lately. And so I think about that. I want to transport somebody, even if it's just for a few minutes, whether they're in a gallery or looking at my stuff online, or maybe they look at it and they're like, they've had a fucking shitty ass day at work, but they're looking up, they look up from their home office and they see, like, maybe they bought one of my prints and they've seen one of my paintings, right?
Yeah.
And so for that to happen, I have to go through an apprenticeship. And I don't have the luxury of being in the 18th century in England or
Hmm.
whatever, and where I'm being apprenticed to a master, portraiture artist or landscape artist in the New York, Hudson School, or somewhere in London or Paris or some other bullshit, right? I have to do this in broad fucking daylight.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so what I do is I think about, I'm starting to develop my own language. I'm going back to the same brushes over and over again, the same color palettes over and over again. And I'm presenting these things and I put them on Instagram, and then I have this conversation with people. And most of those conversations are pretty good.
Yeah.
They're well-meaning folks and they're great and they love art, and they're either buyers or they're people who are other artists, and we have these conversations. And sometimes these conversations are like, or a
Hmm.
quick comment of like fire, 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 emoji, right? Cool.
Yeah.
I know it has struck a chord. Like I've learned that if I create a hellish landscape, and I've painted many of those, I get very little interaction from folks. If I paint a nice bright meadow with something interesting going on with the trees and the little backlighting of the sun, I get a lot of reaction, right?
Hmm.
If I create a close-up of a crow or an eagle and I really focus on the eye, and you see the reflection, you see the limpid eye, like the alive. And people have said that my eyes for my crows and my eagles look very alive. Like one person actually said that one of my crows that I painted looked like they thought it was a photograph,
Wow.
right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so like that's great feedback.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
was going for. I mean, I spent
Yeah.
hours layering on like the paint, the digital paint of the feathers, right? And I wanted that. I wanted someone to look at that and see, like in Native American mythologies, the raven means death is coming,
Hmm.
right? I wanted them to experience that moment, right? And so, like, you don't get that unless you get feedback. So I'm looking for feedback. I'm sort of approaching this as a tech guy. Surprise, surprise. I've been spent 30 years in tech. Blah, blah, blah. I want
Uh-huh.
feedback.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, like, some of the stuff bombs, some of the stuff great. So I look at it, and I'm not like I'm some douchey ass fucking product marketer, like running around trying to figure out what the best, like I'm not trying to do A/B testing of my paintings,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm like, this is what works, this is what doesn't work, these color palettes work, whatever. And so then I start building a practice, and I think about that goal. So if some shithead comes along and says you fucking suck or whatever the hell it is that he wants to say, then, the stupid shit that people say on the internet, like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I keep laughing. The I think I shared with you on Instagram is like Generation X learned right away that if you're on the school bus and you talk shit, you better get ready to be hit.
Uh-huh.
Like the internet breaks that rule because some jackass and I don't know, somewhere somebody's mama's basement somewhere
Yeah.
can say
Yeah.
whatever they want, and you're like, and so you kind of just go meh. So that's what I kind of do over and over again. And I was on this insane cycle, like I said, 275 days in a row of not taking a break. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm aiming for 3 to 5 a week.
Oh, okay.
I want it to be sustainable because I think I'm at that point of my apprenticeship where I don't have to keep doing everything every day, but maybe a few times a week.
Uh-huh.
would do it. And then
Yep.
maybe at some point I get to the point where I have become a master at something ish, air quotes around master. I don't know, moonscapes or something. I don't know, trees, mountain landscapes. And I maybe do one a week. And I spent maybe 2 or 3 days creating that painting.
Mm.
Right. And I'm really, really good at that. And that's what I become known for. Right.
Yes.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm working for. And for me, what I'm treating it as is a laboratory for getting feedback and to be able to iterate and to talk to all of my peeps, because I think that's what Instagram is really good for, because I've met some really great people. I mean, some amazing artists, like, and these people aren't selling a damn thing.
Yeah.
Like, and you look at their stuff and you're like, oh my God, I will never be that good
Yeah.
at whatever they're doing. And that's what I'm saying is I think like there are billions of us humans out there and all of us are insanely talented. But what's happening is we are all trapped within a system where we all have to go to the 9 to 5 if we're lucky that have a nine
Mm.
to five or not working in some child labor bullshit or in a mine in Zambia or something making, trying to get like whatever it is for Elon Musk batteries. One of
Yeah.
one of the headlines I loved was Jeff Bezos and whatever. It was like, what we need is 30 trillion
Oh,
humans so we have
fuck
more
you.
Bachs and
Yeah.
Mozarts. Like there are fucking Bachs and Mozarts right now working their fingers to the bone in your
Yeah.
fucking slave
Shut
mines.
the fuck up.
Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But yeah, so that's the thing is like it's so humbling. Like I get on Instagram and anytime I think that I've created a good thing. Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing about being an artist. I think you felt this as a writer, where you're like, "Damn, I fucking wrote a great scene," and you have
Uh-huh.
to have that. You have to have that moment, but you also have to have the like, "I'm shit."
Yes. Yeah.
Like, I suck. I suck. And there's like this combination you have to find.
Yes.
Uh,
It's an like I'm actually surprised what an emotional roller coaster it is doing this kind of writing. Like there are days like some days I'm like I'm a genius, and then the next
right,
day
right,
I'm
right.
like, what am I even fucking
What the
doing here?
fuck? What the fuck? Like
What's
I should
wrong
just
with me?
like what the hell? I should just like throw this laptop out the window
Yes,
and
exactly.
like I should save all of humanity the displeasure of whatever it is that is the pustulous excrement that is coming on like that is spewing onto the page or the canvas or whatever, right?
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly. Yeah.
So but
Yeah.
that's
Well, that's good.
that's
Like
it.
I actually like that. I will say I have found that it's so important to have community around your
Yeah.
creativity and the
Yes.
people that are really truly artists of any discipline. Almost always. I mean, occasionally you'll get some asshole prima donnas out there, but almost always they're so enthusiastic and they don't view you or anyone else as a threat or competition because they are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. Like nobody can do what they're doing, right? Because it's their voice. And are often really willing, like happy to just talk with you, to give feedback, to give encouragement, to whatever, to mentor and all these other things. I completely agree with that. And in that way, I guess social media is a double-edged sword because you're going to get these rando assholes, but you do also have access to a whole bunch of really cool people who are ready to talk to you about what you're doing and excited for you. And I think that's beautiful, actually. I think that's best case scenario of using the internet.
And we're going to go back to what we were talking about. I can't remember if we hit the record button yet when we were talking about this, but let's talk about this, right? Like we live in uncertain times. We
Yeah.
live in this really weird place where we are on the nice edge. It's like people who lived in the 1930s, right? Like we lived through 4 years of Trump, and then apparently enough jackasses in this country think that he's worth running again, like whatever. And he's basically a fascist, right? And like just there's no I always loved the conversations I had with people back in the run up to 2016. Like, you're overreacting. Trump isn't that bad. Like, motherfucker. And like after like January 6th, I was like, I fucking told you so. Like, when are you gonna fucking smarten up? And one of the things you talked about was like art being sort of like I forget who it was. I was maybe it was Arlo Woody Guthrie who
Mm.
had who had on his guitar like this machine kills fascists,
Uh-huh.
right? Like
Yeah.
art, writing, music, like expression, thinking, feeling, creating, where you're just not a cog in some stupid ass machine where you're making, whatever, and you're doing the stuff, yeah, well, all of us have a 9 to 5, and but then your 5 to 9 is something else where you're like, that's for you, right? And I'm
Mm.
not even talking about like, and I want to dispense with this whole idea of high art and low art.
Yeah, yeah. Agreed.
I want to flush that away. That's just a fucking turd. Get away, get rid of it. Like
Yeah,
my wife is a textile artist.
yeah.
You may think
She
of her as
is.
a knitter. You may think of her as a knitter or crocheter or cross stitch person, but she is a textile artist. She is creating she's taking raw materials and she's creating something beautiful. Sometimes
Hmm.
she improvises and sometimes she works with a pattern, but she's creating. There's no difference in my mind between that and oil paintings or whatever the
Hmm.
fuck,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like that is a human being who is actually sitting down and creating something. That's it, right? I mean, that's what we
Yeah.
do, right? Right?
100%.
Let's,
100%.
right? And so I think like that is the inoculation, right? Like more people doing stuff and creating their own thing. My reaction when I see a new artist on Instagram, I mean, I'm always constantly being presented things, but I'm also looking for new things because I'm always just really interested in stuff. I see a new artist and it's a new person coming out and doing their stuff. And okay, their color choices are kind of raw and maybe their composition's a little off and they're doing this and that. And you know what I'm going to say to them? Hey, good job. Thanks for
Yeah,
sharing this, right?
yeah,
It costs me nothing and it
yeah,
gives them a little bit of juice, right?
yeah, yeah.
And they're gonna like and maybe in another couple of months I might be able to give them a little few pointers on the side. Like I'm not gonna be an asshole about it. And for people who are writing, like you are spending time away from your life, your work, and like, okay, it's not Shakespeare, it's not whatever, Hemingway,
It
whatever,
sure ain't.
but you're doing something, you're filling up,
Yeah,
you put marks on paper. Well, that's essentially what an artist does is put marks on paper. And that's what we do, right? And I think that is just like so that is about as close that's it. That's as
yes.
close as we get to, you know, whatever you think divine is, right?
Agreed. Yep.
Right?
When
Uh,
you do that, when that's part of your life, and this is really the whole crux of this entire podcast, when you center creativity in your life, it fulfills you in ways that inoculate you from all the shit in the
mhm.
world. You are no longer obsessed with chasing capitalist wet dreams when you have everything you need right now,
Yep.
when you feel fulfilled right now with what you're doing. And I
Yep.
want that for everybody. I want everybody to feel that sense of knowing who you are and knowing why you're here and having that urge and then seeing it through and being able to look at it and hand it to somebody else and say, this is this is me. This is who I am, right? This is
Mhm.
my
Mhm.
interpretation of the world and I want to share it with you. It's beautiful. Like that to me, and there's no bad art. Like I know there's more advanced art, there's people who have mastered certain art, but I mean,
Technical art, yeah.
yeah, but like if you're doing something truly with the intent of creating art, and I don't care if you're 2 years old and scribbling on paper or 60 years old and doing pottery, I don't care. If that's what you're doing because you are putting something into the world intentionally and it represents your little tiny view of the universe um in a unique and special way, hell yeah, more. Everyone should be doing art.
I was on this hike, not really a hike, it was more like a day, we had the dogs with us and we had our little fanny packs and stuff going around this little lake, so in Colorado, when the fucking settler colonialists came through, in violation of the 1851 treaty, they couldn't stay here. They could go through the Oregon Trail, but they couldn't stay here, but they stayed here. So that's my politics and power of the people. And by the people, I mean the fucking Arapaho and the Cheyenne. So they dug all these quarries and just basically raped the earth, right?
Yeah.
And then just did all this bullshit because they were making fucking money, just chasing money. And then so like in the 1960s, this lady came by and was like, these are fucking ugly holes in the ground. Let's create these lakes, these little ponds, right? And so they created all these ponds around the area from basically filled in all these quarries. And like lo and behold, like a college's wet dream, you fill in these, they put in these what we're like, oh my God, the fish come back, the birds come
Yeah,
back,
yeah,
like all this wildlife come back, and and then all these plants come back. Like it's this really amazing view into like pre-contact front range of Colorado. Like what I just got done reading. So there's a woman by the name of Margaret Cole who wrote this magnificent biography of Chief Left Hand, who was the chief of the bands of Arapaho. And I'm always constantly laughing out loud. And a lot of the book is very gutting because it talks about the Sand Creek Massacre, which was an ultimate betrayal of these people. But one of the things that makes me laugh about this is that the white people would come, the whites came through, basically just shooting way too many buffalo and antelope, just
right.
and then they were like getting sick, just getting sick all the fucking time. And the Indians were like, stop pooping in the water.
Idiots.
They didn't fucking know anything. Like,
Yeah,
when like if when you want to have drinking water from the river, make sure your horse and you are not pooping upstream of where you're getting the water, right? It's like, what
yeah.
the fuck is wrong with you? But they're the savages. Right. Anyway, all that digression is like we're having this little walk around this little place and we're watching it, and we came across these two ladies. They were probably in their 80s, if a day. And they had these tiny little easels and these tiny little watercolor kits, and they were doing plein air painting. If you're
Oh,
familiar with the term plein air, so
I'm not.
like in the 19th century, before there were the tubes of paint, which
Uh,
was like 1840 something that they were invented, what painters had to do, if you were lucky, is that you would make your own paints from like flowers and shit like that, and then you put them in
uh,
bladders, and you would work in a studio. You had to work in a studio,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
they invented the tubes of paint, and so then what we have is the standardization of paint colors,
Mm,
right? So like if you have like this certain color of blue, then everyone has that color of blue. And you wouldn't have to go and find that particular flower in that particular field and grind up those flowers to make that pigment.
yeah.
And so like there was sort of like the mass commoditization of paint and including these tubes. And so what that led to was this idea of like the impressionists would go out, like Monet and those guys would go out with an easel. They would stand up in a field with their paints and brushes and paint the mountain they saw in front of them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't like try to like do a sketch or whatever, try to remember to bring them back to the studio and then paint it. Right. So now plein air painting is this thing. And so like these old ladies were like sitting there, delightful old ladies were sitting there with these watercolors and they were painting the pond and the ducks and stuff. And I just sat there and watched them for a while. And the fucking paintings are terrible. But you know what? They were having such a good time. They had this little towel out with like cheese and like little
Oh,
crackers. And like they had like a little bottle of wine
yeah,
and they were doing all this stuff. And it was amazing to watch them do this. And they were just having a hoot
yeah,
of a time,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And like, I mean, I knew the history of this particular place, that it had been built as a quarry and then refilled with water, and then wildlife has come back. And, we're doing a lot of stuff in Colorado to try to bring back that prairie ecology. But like, I thought to myself, this is the ugliest place on earth
Mm,
at one point.
yeah.
It was probably the most beautiful place on earth and then became the ugliest place on earth because we dug a giant big fucking hole in it and tried to get whatever it is that they wanted to get out of it. And then we filled it with water and it became beautiful again. And here are these humans, these Homo sapiens, with their watercolors and their cheese and stuff, and they're painting this little pond, this little artificial pond. And I thought that was kind of cool. Like, I'm not sure what to think of that. Like,
Yeah.
like because I'm a bitter fuck, and sarcastic shit and Gen X and all this other stuff. And I was like, man, this is actually kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
I
what
don't
I'm
know.
talking about when I say art is the process, not necessarily the product. And that's why I can say with confidence there is no bad art. Because if you're engaging in that process, the product is just an afterthought. Some people may like it, some people may not. You may keep it, you may throw it away, whatever, whatever. But the real value comes in being there in that moment and allowing yourself to feel that inspiration and then to let it flow out of you into some intentional act. And I mean, really, that's the essence of our humanity, as far as I'm concerned. That's what we're here for.
I also want to add a fourth thing because I'm a giant pain in the ass.
Yeah, yeah.
I think at some point, what my aspiration is to create a piece of art that will be hated and reviled and then banned by the Christian right.
I think it's a worthwhile goal. That's a good litmus test, if you ask me.
I want to just upset a bunch of people.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and we have a lot of, we actually do, we do. And so all joking aside, we do have a lot of that stunt bullshit in art today
Hmm.
where you get people who will make, who will create, I remember in the 80s, I forget the artist who created the Piss Christ. They put the crucifix in a jar, supposedly of urine. It was probably lemonade, and took a picture of it, but
Mm.
that called it Piss Christ, and then
Uh-huh.
everyone lost their fucking minds.
Yeah, yeah.
And then another person did like the sculpture of the Virgin Mary, supposedly with elephant dung, and
Hmm.
everyone
Hmm.
lost their minds. And then
Yeah, yeah.
there's a
And the
guy who
last
like
temptation of Christ.
last
That was a
temptation of
big thing.
Christ,
Yeah.
and then there's like the artist, the visual artist who like took the banana and slapped it on the wall and put tape on it, called it art. And
Yeah.
then later on, another dude came and ate the banana and put the peel back up. All this stunt bullshit. I mean, it's classified as art in my
Yeah.
mind, but
Yeah.
is it the same as a Da Vinci or a Monet or the things that we consider to be high art and low art? And then we kind of like we just have multiple cans of worms open at the same time. And but they're doing that for a reason because that guy who did the Piss Christ or whatever the artist was has been able to sell other art because that's how they got known, right?
Yeah.
A
But
lot
also
of
it
that.
could be I mean, like it could be obviously that came from somewhere. It wasn't just to be provocative, I don't think. You have the opportunity. I mean, if you want to be provocative, you can do it in a much less mm, artistic way, right? Like you could just go out there and stand on the sidewalk with a sandwich board and start screaming about whatever. Like there are lots of ways to be provocative, but I clearly there's some meaning there. And maybe he's the only one that knows that. And you don't have to appreciate it or see value in it. That's fine. Not all art is for me. And even some of the greatest art that's ever been, I'm not really particularly fond of, like, whatever. But it still has value and I still respect it for what it is. It's somebody's attempt to
Mhm.
translate their inspiration, their feeling, their understanding of the world in the way that only they could do. And I respect that.
Like one of the things that I think I touch on is what the story I was getting to before I got derailed about raging against like the bullshit that happened in Colorado in 1851. So you walk into countless coffee shops in Colorado and elsewhere and stuff, and you see the art on the walls, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's grandma art, right? And you can
Uh-huh.
deride it and go like, oh, they're making flowers and whatever, blah blah blah, blah. I guarantee you that grandma who's making the grandma art is out selling your ass, first of all. Like, so shut the fuck up.
Right.
She's kicking your ass. And somebody loves that shit, right? And is buying it. If your value proposition for art is that somebody's buying it, she's kicking your ass, right?
Yeah.
And so then therefore you can't, well then art is something it's not commercial, so then I have to make this other statement about blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, fuck you. Somebody likes that. You don't like it, but somebody does
Right.
like, right?
Right.
And so like it all falls apart. And I tell people like I don't believe that there's not like a adjudicated like council of art hegemons who like are like, this is art, and you have created a masterpiece. I think people just create stuff and people like it or don't like it.
Yeah.
And I think anyone who's creating anything on any subject matter with any material and using any color palette could probably create art and be people like you'll find somebody in the world who'd be like, oh, that's pretty cool. Hippos. You want to paint hippos in like gouache. I don't oil paintings. I don't know. Charcoal. And they're all like, Technicolor
Yeah.
with like rainbows shooting out of their ass. I bet
Right.
you, I bet you the artist is doing it now. Like this,
I would
it's like,
totally love
right? I
that
mean,
art.
right? And then somebody would be like, "Damn, I want that. I want to look. I had a shitty job, and I'm at this home office. I'm gonna look up and I want to see a hippo with like a rainbow shooting out of its ass.
Yes,
I
please.
love that.
Yeah.
Please." Um, and you know what? Cool. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
A part of it makes me laugh, right? And
Yeah.
Is it Da Vinci? Is it Van Gogh? Is it Monet? Who gives a fuck? I don't know. Like, whatever. I
It doesn't have
Sure.
to be. I think that's the
Right.
thing, right? I think that's the thing is because we commodify art, we have hierarchies in our mind. But
Yeah.
I don't think that it works that way. And I think the sooner we can all let go of that and just create as we want to create and appreciate the people that appreciate it, then we'll all be a lot happier. And I don't think anybody needs like what you were saying, like Van Gogh, he sold one painting when he was alive, and yet he
Yeah.
created all these hundreds and hundreds of paintings.
He is the father of us all in the 20th
Yeah,
century, more so than Monet or Gauguin and all those guys and Manet and all those guys. And I've studied all of them. And it's Van Gogh. We keep going back to Van Gogh.
yeah,
He was an insane, mad fucking bastard. And he was mad because he touched the whatever it is that you and I want to talk about, how we define divine, right?
yeah, yeah,
And I think that when you do touch it, you go insane, or if you're not
yeah.
already there, whatever you
But
want to
like
call it, right?
we know it's great art now, and we believe it, and it's universally accepted. You can get fucking
But
Starry
everyone
Night on
shit
a
on it.
fucking mouse pad. Yeah, but back
But
then people were
everyone
like,
shit
"What
on
the
it.
fuck is this?" Right? This ain't
The
no
the
plate of fruit on a table. I don't want any of that.
Well, if you want to make yourself feel better about your own art, look at what the critics would say about Monet stuff.
Uh-huh,
His,
uh-huh.
his like foggy London picture, like his series of studies of the fog in London. They were just like, "What is this? This is an unfinished piece. When are you going to finish this painting? Like, this is
Yeah.
crap. What the fuck's going on?" Like the stuff they said about Picasso, about Kandinsky, about all these guys, all these
Yes.
painters. It was just like, what is this shit? I'm not trying to say that like the stuff I'm making is like immune to criticism, but I was just like, I think of going back to that whole idea that I have about there's the people who make things and there's a bunch of parasites that live in the gut of the thing.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's the visual I have. It's like you got to start making the thing, and then all the things sort of live off of that. And it's
Yeah.
like at a certain point, you're like, you shouldn't have eaten that. You're really sick, and you're like, oh, okay, I should pay attention to that. But otherwise, I'm not going to pay attention to it. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
how. I mean, that sounds really like ridiculous, but I just feel like there's so much criticism.
No, I don't think that's ridiculous. And I also think that artists who have found themselves are compelled to create, right? You don't really even have a choice at some point. You're just like, I have got to get this out, and I don't even care if anybody likes it. It has to happen for me, right? Like, I'm going to do this. And that gives you a certain amount of confidence that can kind of bolster you against other people's opinions. To me, that descending into that kind of madness and getting totally into flow and just producing this art that turns you on so that when you're done, it's like you've woken up from a dream and you're just like, I can't believe this came out of me. Like that feeling is amazing and it's wonderful. And I want that for every single person. And I think that that's what happens when you dedicate yourself to your art and when you allow yourself to be immersed in your art and to follow that urge, that compulsion. And we are just so terrified of opinion and we edit ourselves constantly. And when you are able to give that up, that's real freedom. I mean, that it feels amazing. And that's
It's
what it
pretty.
should
It's
be.
it's a really subversive thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
I mean, like
Yeah.
to be able to do this kind of thing and I'm just going to do whatever. I
Yeah.
mean, think about it. Like this is like one of the reasons why like the Nazis hated jazz and like the Nazis hated like modern art, right?
Completely.
Because
Yes.
like these guys were not going to follow, like they knew they were masters, but they're just going to like, you know what? I'm not going to pick a key today. I'm just going to do whatever the fuck I want, and I'm going to just gonna play some jazz, and
Yeah.
I'm going to paint faces that are completely disjointed, or I'm going to just paint this wild ass abstract. Like what they saw was what the Nazis saw was like, okay, here's a canvas or a piece of paper or whatever, and what we're going to get from this artist is we're going to get something defined. I know that they were going to have a certain output that I can expect a Wagnerian opera or something. I don't fucking know. And or a painting in a classical style, a portrait of a princess or something. And then they're just like, I'm just going to paint whatever the fuck I want. And they're like,
Right.
oh, that's a reminder, like, oh yeah, like that canvas is blank for a reason, and I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be me. It's going to be great. And one thing that authoritarians hate is individualism, right? Like, that's you want to stamp all that out,
Yeah. Yeah.
And we see that a little bit in like charismatic religions, right? We've had this conversation too, right? Like the charismatic versions of Christianity and Islam and Judaism, like and Hinduism, even we're seeing, or any religion, like it's like, no, 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 you've got to conform to the, whatever.
Yes.
And it's like, well, if you look back at the teachings of the guy that kind of founded this thing, he kind of wasn't into that so
Yeah.
much. He was,
Yeah, that's the irony, right? Everybody who
you
founds
know,
a religion is a complete rebel who overturns the
right,
order. And then
right. Like,
and they're like, we're gonna
yeah,
follow in your footsteps by making everybody a conformist.
right. You
Hi.
must. But yeah, we've gone far afield here, but like,
Yes, yes, you're right.
in terms of like things, but I think all of this is like really dangerous. Like the most dangerous thing in the world to an authoritarian is a blank sheet of paper and a person
Yeah,
who's willing to fill it.
yeah.
Uh, and so,
Amen. And that's why I
right?
think it's so crucial for people to be doing art right now. Whether, I want to do away with this idea that you have to be a professional. That's why I wanted you on here because you work full time, right? At least for the time being, you are in technology. It's not like you're doing art for to earn your paycheck. You have to go to an office every day. You have to do, but you're still willing to make art an important an increasingly important part of your life. And to me, that's inspiring. And I hope other people do that. I don't want to see people get crushed by the machine. I want people to be able, at the risk of sounding way too Gen X, I want people to be able to flip off the machine. And by flip
Yeah.
off, I mean throw them the bird and be like, fuck you. This is my time, and I'm going to do something subversive and weird and crazy and totally not conformist. And it's going to represent me. And I don't care. I don't care what you say. I don't care if anybody buys it. I'm going to do it because I have the agency to do it. And I think, like you said, there will be people that like it. Maybe not the whole world, maybe whatever, but you will find an audience. You'll find people that appreciate it. And you're going to be able to inspire them to do something similar. And that's how we help each other out. We remind each other that we are unique individuals with agency and with power, and that nothing and no one can take that away from us.
I'd like to share something that I think might become a really good epilogue to this conversation.
Go for it.
Back in the day, I was a science fiction. I was a parasite. I was a book critic
No.
for science fiction, and I had a really nice relationship with a woman whose pen name was Severna Park. This is when she was writing her first novels in the mid 90s, and she eventually ended up winning the Nebula Award. Her name is Suzanne Feldman, and she won the Nebula Award in 2001 for a delightful story called The Cure for Everything. And she and I had this correspondence over email, and I was writing a lot of nonfiction at the time, and she was telling me like, we were going back and forth, and she was like, I just asked her, I said, well, what do you want to like? What's your advice for writers and stuff? And she said the most important thing that I've ever experienced, like and I think this translates to all arts. She said, write the books you want to read.
Yeah.
And I thought about that a lot, right? And like I want to paint the paintings I want to look at and enjoy, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to I
Mm-hmm.
want to write the stuff that I want to read, and the underlying message is like make the art for yourself.
Yeah.
Like don't chase fads and don't chase whatever, but make the thing that you think is real and what's true. And then what's going to happen is because and with the magical age that we live in, that we're all super networked. Yes, it brings the complete douchetards from mama's basement in Kentucky to your face, but it
Well,
also connects you with all these people who are like-minded eventually, right?
yeah.
If you
Yeah.
do it right, there's this double-edged thing, right? And you make this art for yourself, and then you realize that there's a lot of yous out there, people who
Yeah.
are attuned to that frequency, right? Whatever it is you're writing or painting or music or whatever, right? And I think about that a lot. Those words really resonate. I think she said that to me like maybe 25, 30 years ago. And it's very true, right? Like write what you want to
Yes.
read, right?
Yes. I
Um,
completely agree. I have just a quick anecdote. I actually started writing a completely different novel last year, and
mhm.
I had to quit because I'm like, ugh, this is just
Right.
such a slog. And then I got this why, like, just it all appeared right in my head, this crazy, ridiculous, like, honestly, it's ridiculous
Mhm.
novel. And I started writing it, and I'm so in love with it. And and
Mhm.
and I've had this conversation with myself over and over again. Is anyone going to want to read this? Is this even marketable? What is this? And yet
Mhm.
I can't stop because this is the thing I want to do. And it
Mhm.
it just can't, like, I can't not do it. Right.
Mhm.
And to me, that's a good sign. And who cares? Like, honestly, it feels so good to do it. I just don't care if anybody else likes it. But I'm
Mhm.
confident that there are at least, like, I don't think I'm some special snowflake. There's at least a handful of weirdos in the world that will like it, and I'm going to try and find them. And
Mhm.
that's it. I mean, that is my artistic goal at this point, right? And I absolutely think you can't put your heart and soul, like, art does take work, right?
Mhm.
Especially when you are trying to gain mastery and learn, improve, with your skill. It takes a lot of work. If you're not doing something that you really believe in and that you really love, you're not going to be able to stick to it. So find that what turns you on and stick to it, and don't listen to anybody else. I mean, yes, listen to people who have, you know who are your contemporaries or who are willing to offer you guidance or mentorship or whatever, but ultimately you're the one that has to make the decision and be like, no, I am going to keep that in there, or no, I am going to do this particular thing a certain way because that is how I see it. And you have to have the confidence in yourself that you can do it that way.
And and honestly, like if you are a person of reasonable competence
Mm,
and reasonable like emotional intelligence, like any way that we want to measure intelligence, right? Let's say you want to be a landscape painter or a mystery novelist or a haiku writer. You're going to go look at 500 fucking landscape paintings and you're going to read 300 fucking haikus or whatever and 500 mystery novels. And when you write your own mystery novel or paint your own painting, you're going to be like, that part is good, but my trees need work, right?
yeah,
Or I'm not
yeah.
getting the
Hmm.
rhyme, I'm not getting the bumpity bump in my haiku right. And you're going to go fix it because you are a reasonable person who is a craftsman, craftswoman, craftsperson, and you're going to like figure this out, right?
Yeah, right.
Right? You're living like all that's the other thing that artists live in a not yes, we build these communities like we talk about on Instagram, but we also live in a community where we communicate with other artists who are most of them are long dead, and I don't get the opportunity to talk to, Van Gogh and Rembrandt and whoever, but I can look at their paintings and
Yeah,
go, that's how they dealt with contrast. That's how they made that shit pop. They use contrast, or
yeah,
whatever, or
yeah,
they use this technique or whatever. Yeah, I can have that community, I can have that ageless conversation, right? And so then I mean, I'm not saying that what you should do is you should like measure yourself against Rembrandt and Hemingway, and for God's sake, you'd never start. But you can create something and then go, is this good
yeah,
objectively?
yeah.
But the thing is, too, like sometimes you don't even have to be that good. You can just be good enough,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a really
Uh,
good point, actually.
right? There's
Yeah, like,
fucking tons of people who are making landscape paintings who are selling poetry and whatever and mystery novels that you
yeah,
read it, you're like objectively, this isn't actually that good, but it's good enough.
yeah. No, like,
I mean,
I had this conversation with myself too. I'm never going to be a person who writes books that are reviewed in the New Yorker. Like, that's just not, I'm not that person, right? And I don't have that level of ability, at least not at this point. And so, I started looking at, what is it that I really want out of this? I want to be able to do what I want to do without compromise. I want to be able to sell it, obviously, in some form or fashion. And it turns out there are whole markets that are just around, these genre writing, self-published
mhm,
authors, right? And they
mhm,
have a following and they have their
mhm,
stuff that they put out and people buy it and they make a living off of it and that's what they want to do. That's reasonable to me, right? Like I have to have reasonable expectations. And just because I'm not fucking Zadie Smith or or Rebecca Solnit doesn't mean that I can't be a writer and that I can't make a living at it. I may not be amazing, but I can be good enough. And it's something that can drive me forward and keep me fulfilled and happy. And that's okay. That's okay. Like only my pride would tell me, oh, if you can't be the best, then you can't do this. Fuck that. And who knows? Maybe I'll develop at some point to a point where I actually am, an amazing writer.
Mhm.
But like I'm not gonna wait till that point. Like I'm not gonna sit there in a dark cave and write and write and write for the next 10 years until I come up
Right.
with a masterpiece. I'm gonna start writing and I'm gonna start putting it out there.
Right.
And
Get feedback.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And honestly, there's nothing wrong with being in the cave. I mean, Jay Salinger did that. That's just the way he did it,
right.
right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
fine, right? That's just
Right.
fine. There's no like that's the other thing about art. Like, there's no formula. So like this is crazy story. Like, okay, so at the very end of my academic career, I had decided that I was not going to pursue a PhD in medieval studies, and mostly this is about jobs. And there was this internet thing I wanted to be part of, and I was like thinking about joining that and all this other stuff. But I had been immersed for years and years and years in sort of these medieval stories, and one of my favorite stories was the tale of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. It's a Middle English poem and fairly famous and fucking tons of scholarship on this thing. Like J.R. Tolkien, everybody has written, tomes about this poem. And in 1994, this little jackass named Tom Myer wrote a two-page article in a literary journal. I was the first in over 500 years of literary criticism on this poem to notice that the central tenets of what was going on in that story was being couched in metaphors of embroidery and stitching.
Hmm.
If you don't know, the poem is that the Green Knight shows up on Christmas Day and says, anyone who wants to lop my head off is free to do so, but I will come back in a year, as granted that you will stand 1 year and 1 day from now, and I will do the same to you. And Gawain does that, and he chops the creature's head off, and then the creature just picks up his head, puts it back on, and says, "See you in a year and a day." And so this whole thing about truth, truthfulness, and being of service to your community, and being the gentle Knicht, right? All this sort of stuff. And I was the first one to write about embroidery and stitching and all that as the central metaphor, because there was this key scene, and I was talking about that, and I wrote this up. And then I left academia.
Hmm.
And if you do a Google, Tom Myer, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, I published this thing. It's line 1771 of the poem, and I published this thing. It has been cited in dissertations, all these other papers, all these books, hundreds of times since 1990, whatever the hell it is. I wrote this stupid, I just whacked this thing together and sent it off, and I got it published right before I quit academia. All this leading me to say that if you go into a world, whatever it is, right? And you just dig in and you do something and you focus on it and you create something, you're going to go and do good things by any objective measure. And 30 years later, you're gonna be like, oh, I did that thing. I wrote this paper, whatever. I painted that painting, I wrote that book, whatever. And if you don't do it, you'll have fuck all, zero,
Yeah,
zip,
yeah.
goose egg, right?
Uh-huh.
Just do it. Go do it.
Just do it. Just do it.
Just do it.
Word.
99% of it will be crap. Guess what? 99% of everything is crap.
It's true. It's true.
But you'll have something some random shit thing that you do. It'll be like, whoa, oh my God, that's really great.
Yeah.
I, there's no rules. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
weird shit, you know. I don't know that I don't know why I brought that story up, but it's just like I think about that story all the time because I
I
always
like that story.
every year or so I check my citations and be like, damn, if I were still in academia and if I was still like writing papers about medieval knights and shit, I would be like, oh wow, that you're the Tom. I wonder if there's like a bunch of guys out there going, I wonder what happened to Tom Myer. He wrote that thing on Sir Cowan the Green Knight.
No, I like that story because you don't know, right? Van Gogh didn't know that he would be considered the greatest artist that ever lived. Like people, you don't know. And if you're really into what you're doing, you don't know. You just do it. And that is a really good reminder to just be like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to send it out into the world. I'm going to release it out there. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to start something new
Because
instead
guess
of just
what? In
sitting
about
there
40 years,
fixating
you're
on it. Yeah,
because in 40 years you're fucking dead. 50
it's
years you're
true.
dead.
It's true.
You're
This is
dead.
such a, I think we should end on that.
So cheerful.
The moral of the story is people, you're gonna fucking die.
You're
So
fucking
like,
die.
so it's
Yeah.
true. It's true.
Yeah. But
All
yeah,
right,
anyway,
Meyer.
this has
You
been
have
very
been,
delightful. Thank you,
yeah,
Q.
yeah. No,
Um,
uh, this is
go
awesome.
fucking right now. God damn it.
I am.
I'm wagging, you can't see me, but I'm wagging my finger at her.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I feel very inspired by this conversation. I'm glad we had it, and
The
forward
moral of
to
the story is
seeing.
if this jackass can go paint, anyone can do it.
By the way, I am gonna link to your stuff in my show notes, so everybody
Yeah.
go
Go
find
to my
Meyer
website. Yeah.
Man. Yeah,
My mental health. Yeah. And like, if you hate something, keep it to yourself.
yeah, yeah. If you're a dick to Meyer Man, he's gonna tell me, and God help you, I will come after you.
We're gonna roll up in your house in front of your house with a van and a bunch of fucking like duct tape, and we're gonna duct tape you to the windshield.
That is a really random threat, but I appreciate it.